1992, a man walked into a small ceramics shop just off Interstate 70 in Indiana. He browsed for a few minutes. Then he walked behind the counter and shot the store clerk in the back of the head. He took less than $50 from the register. He got back on the highway. 4 days later, he did it again, in a different state. He was never identified. He was never caught. And to this day, no one knows where he went. He may still be out there. In 2004, the FBI launched what they called the Highway Serial Killings Initiative. What prompted it was a pattern investigators had been seeing for decades, but couldn't quantify. Bodies found along America's interstate system, in different states, different jurisdictions, with no clear connection between victims or suspects. By 2009, the initiative had identified over 850 unsolved murders linked to America's highways. 850. Many of these cases have since been solved, but many haven't. The killers behind these 3 cases were never identified, never charged, never caught. Some investigators believe they're still alive. Between April 8th and May 7th, 1992, a killer went on a spree across 3 states along Interstate 70. The victims were store clerks, all of them working alone in small shops just off the highway. A bridal store in Wichita, Kansas, a ceramic shop in Terre Haute, Indiana, a boot store in Indianapolis, a video store in St. Louis, Missouri. 6 victims in 29 days. The method never changed. The killer would enter the store during business hours, browse, appear to be a normal customer, then approach from behind and fire a single bullet to the back of the head. He took small amounts of cash, never more than a few $100s, and left. Investigators noticed something disturbing almost immediately. All the victims were women, except one, Michael McCown, shot while stocking shelves at a ceramic shop in Indiana. He had long hair. Investigators concluded the killer had mistaken him for a woman in his haste. He was targeting women specifically, and he was organized enough to case each location, choose his moment, and disappear back onto the interstate before anyone found the body. The FBI built a profile. White male, between 25 and 40, familiar with the I-70 corridor, possibly worked in sales or traveled the highway regularly, likely drove an ordinary vehicle, nothing that would stand out. A composite sketch was released based on witness descriptions from a few customers who had seen a man matching the suspect's description in the stores shortly before the murders. The sketch showed an ordinary-looking man, brown hair, average build, the kind of face you would forget immediately after seeing it. Thousands of tips came in. Hundreds of suspects were investigated. None of them were charged. The killings stopped as suddenly as they started. After May 7th, 1992, nothing. Investigators have never been able to determine why the killings stopped. Did he move? Did he change his method? Did he die? In 2004, 12 years after the murders, DNA was extracted from evidence collected at the scenes. The profile was entered into CODIS, the FBI's national DNA database. No match was found. The DNA has been resubmitted periodically as the database grows. No match has ever been found. The I-70 killer remains one of the FBI's most wanted unsolved cases. 6 people were murdered in 29 days along one of America's busiest highways. The killer walked back onto Interstate 70 after each murder and disappeared into the traffic. He has never been identified. 33 years later, the case is still open. The Colonial Parkway is a scenic road in Virginia connecting Jamestown, Williamsburg, and Yorktown, historic American towns, popular with tourists, surrounded by dense forest. Between 1986 and 1989, 4 couples were murdered on or near this road. 8 victims total, all of them young, all of them killed at overlooks or parking areas along the parkway. No witnesses, no physical evidence left at the scene, no DNA, no fingerprints. The killer or killers knew exactly what they were doing. The first couple was found in October 1986. Kathy Thomas, 27, and Rebecca Dowski, 21, found in a car near the York River. Both had been strangled. A rope was found at the scene, but nothing that could be traced. The second couple in 1987, David Knobling, 20, and Robin Edwards, 14, found near a boat landing off the Parkway, shot. The third couple in 1988, Richard Call, 20, and Kathleen Thomas, 18, found in a car, carbon monoxide poisoning. Their car had been moved after they died. The fourth couple in 1989, Anna Maria Phelps, 18, and Daniel Lauer, 21, found in the woods near the Parkway, both strangled. 4 couples, 3 years, the same road. The FBI took over the investigation, and they noticed something that has never been fully explained publicly. Something that led investigators to a deeply uncomfortable theory. The crime scenes were too clean. Experienced forensic teams found almost no usable physical evidence at any of the scenes, not because the locations were exposed to weather, but because someone had systematically removed or avoided leaving evidence. Someone with knowledge of forensic investigation, someone who knew what investigators looked for. The leading theory, still officially unconfirmed, is that the Colonial Parkway killer had law enforcement training, possibly was law enforcement. The theory explains several things that otherwise don't fit. The victims, young couples parked in isolated areas, would have been unlikely to let a stranger approach their car, but they would have lowered their window for a police officer or someone who appeared to be one. It explains the clean crime scenes, the lack of evidence, the methodical nature of each killing, and it explains something else. Investigators noted that in several cases, the couple's cars appeared to have been flagged down or signaled to stop rather than approached at random. The FBI has interviewed hundreds of former and current law enforcement officers connected to the Parkway. No charges have ever been filed. The Colonial Parkway murders officially remain unsolved. The victims' families have spent decades pushing for answers. In 2010, the FBI reviewed the cases again. New DNA technology was applied to whatever evidence remained. Nothing conclusive was found. The Parkway still runs between those 3 historic Virginia towns. People still park at the overlooks, and whoever killed 8 people on that road between 1986 and 1989 has never faced justice. Between April and September of 1988, 9 women disappeared from the coastal city of New Bedford, Massachusetts. Their bodies were found months later along the sides of interstates and off-ramps in the underbrush, scattered across a wide area of southeastern Massachusetts. All 9 were women who had been struggling with addiction, with poverty, with circumstances that made them vulnerable and made their disappearances easy to overlook. The killer knew that. Police were slow to connect the cases. The victims lived on the margins of society, and their disappearances were not initially treated as urgent. It was only when the bodies began to appear, discovered by road crews, by hunters, by people who happened to walk into the brush near the highway, that investigators realized they had a serial killer operating in their city. By the time the pattern was recognized, 9 women were dead. A 10th disappeared and was never found. There was one suspect, Kenneth Ponte, a local attorney who knew several of the victims and whose behavior during the investigation raised serious concerns. He was erratic. He made statements that didn't add up. Several people who knew him told investigators he was capable of violence. Prosecutors began building a case against him. Then, in 1992, before charges could be filed, Kenneth Ponte died of natural causes. The killings had stopped in 1988, the same year Ponte began to feel the heat of the investigation. They didn't resume after his death. Prosecutors have never officially named him as the killer. Without charges, without a trial, he died as a suspect, not a convicted man. And because he died without being charged, the case remains officially unsolved. The families of the 9 victims have no official answer, no conviction, no confession, no closure. What makes the New Bedford case particularly disturbing, beyond the murders themselves, is what it revealed about how society values certain lives over others. 9 women were killed. Their disappearances went unnoticed for months in some cases. By the time investigators took the pattern seriously, the killer had already finished. The FBI's Highway Serial Killings Initiative was partly inspired by cases like New Bedford, by the recognition that victims on the margins of society were being targeted specifically because investigators were less likely to connect the dots quickly, less likely to look. 9 women, no official verdict. The case is still open.